There comes a moment in every sport when a rising star stops being called the future and suddenly becomes part of the present. For years, Alexandra Eala was introduced as one of tennis' brightest young prospects, a talented teenager with enormous potential, a promising player carrying the hopes of an entire nation. But after one unforgettable week in Washington, that conversation has changed forever, because this isn't about potential anymore. This isn't about projections. And it certainly isn't about hype. Alexandra Eala has officially climbed into the top 20 of the WTA rankings, reaching a career-high world number 20 after an extraordinary championship run at the Mubadala DC Open. For the first time in history, a Filipina has entered the elite group of the world's 20 best women's tennis players. That achievement alone would have made headlines around the globe. But what makes this story even more remarkable is how she got there. Champions are often judged not only by the trophies they lift, but by the opponents they overcome. And when tennis fans look back at Eala's path through Washington, many couldn't believe what they were seeing. One elite player after another stood in her way. Olympic gold medalists, Grand Slam champions, former finalists, top 10 stars, established veterans who had already built careers many players only dream about. Yet Alexandra Eala kept winning. She refused to be intimidated by reputations. She refused to slow down when the pressure grew. And with every victory, the disbelief surrounding her run slowly transformed into admiration. That's why her rise has captured the attention of the entire tennis world. This wasn't the kind of tournament where favorable draws opened the door. It wasn't a week where the biggest names were absent. Instead, Eala earned her title by competing against some of the toughest opponents women's tennis could offer. Every match demanded something different. Every round tested another aspect of her game: her movement, her composure, her tactical intelligence, and perhaps most importantly, her belief that she belonged on the same court as the sport's biggest stars. Few young players experience a breakthrough this dramatic. Even fewer manage to do it while carrying the expectations of an entire country. For Filipino sports fans, Alexandra Eala has represented hope for years. She developed through international competition, steadily improving against stronger opponents while gaining valuable experience on a professional tour. Every milestone hinted that something special could eventually happen, but very few imagined that the leap would come this quickly or on such a massive stage. However, what happened next surprised even seasoned tennis observers. As the updated WTA rankings became official, Eala's name appeared beside the world's biggest stars. Not somewhere outside the spotlight, but firmly inside the top 20. Suddenly, she wasn't chasing the elite anymore. She had become part of it. That distinction changes everything. Being ranked among the world's top players isn't simply a number beside your name. It reflects consistency over an entire season, success against quality opponents, and the ability to deliver under pressure across multiple tournaments. The WTA ranking system rewards players who continue performing week after week, making every point earn a reflection of sustained excellence rather than a single magical moment. And that's exactly why this achievement carries so much weight. The excitement surrounding Eala isn't driven by emotion alone. It's supported by results that have forced the tennis community to take notice. Analysts who once described her as an exciting prospect are now discussing her as a legitimate contender capable of challenging established stars. Fans who had followed her journey for years suddenly found themselves watching the rest of the world discover what they believed all along. Social media quickly reflected that shift. Highlights from Washington spread across every major platform. Tennis pages celebrated her fearless performances. Discussions exploded among fans debating where this remarkable run ranks among the season's biggest breakthrough stories. The WTA itself embraced the excitement, recognizing the momentum surrounding one of the fastest rising names in the sport. But beneath all the celebration lies an even bigger question. Was Washington simply the tournament of Alexandra Eala's life? Or was it the beginning of something much greater? Because history shows that reaching the top is one challenge. Staying there is something entirely different. The world's best players now know exactly who Alexandra Eala is. They have watched her defeat elite competition. They have seen her remain composed under championship pressure. And from this point forward, every opponent will prepare differently whenever her name appears in the draw. That may become the greatest challenge of all. Yet if Washington proved anything, It's that Alexandra Eala has already shown an ability to thrive when expectations are highest. She didn't just survive one of the toughest weeks of her career. She transformed it into a historic milestone that has changed the conversation surrounding women's tennis in the Philippines forever. But that's only the beginning, because the road that carried Alexandra Eala to world number 20 was filled with dramatic battles, momentum swings, and victories over some of the biggest names in the sport. And understanding that remarkable journey reveals why so many believe this breakthrough could be far more than a one-week sensation. To understand why Alexandra Eala's rise has become one of the biggest stories on the WTA Tour, you have to look beyond the ranking itself. The number beside her name tells only part of the story. The real story is found in the journey that led to it, a journey that demanded resilience, tactical maturity, and an ability to elevate her game every single time the challenge became greater. From the opening rounds of the Mubadala DC Open, it became clear that Eala wasn't just playing good tennis. She was playing with confidence that seemed to grow stronger after every match. Her shot selection became more decisive, her movement looked freer, and perhaps most importantly, she appeared completely comfortable competing against opponents with far more experience on the biggest stages. That confidence was immediately put to the test. Standing across the net was Olympic champion Jung Chinwon, a player known throughout the tour for her explosive power, heavy ground strokes, and ability to dictate rallies from the baseline. Facing an opponent of that caliber is never simple, especially in the early rounds of the tournament when players are still trying to find their rhythm. But Eala never allowed the occasion to overwhelm her. Instead of trying to match power with power, she relied on intelligent court positioning, patience during extended rallies, and precise ball placement. Rather than forcing winners from impossible positions, she waited for opportunities to appear naturally. It was a performance that demonstrated not only technical ability, but also remarkable tactical discipline. That victory immediately sent a message throughout the tournament. Alexandra Eala wasn't in Washington simply to gain experience. She was there to compete. However, the draw refused to become any easier. Waiting in the next stage was Leylah Fernandez, the defending Washington champion, and a player who understands exactly what it takes to succeed on those courts. Fernandez's speed, consistency, and fighting spirit have frustrated countless opponents throughout her career, making her one of the toughest competitors to eliminate from any event. Matches against players like Fernandez often become battles of endurance. Every point has to be earned. Every mistake is punished. Momentum can shift within just a few rallies. Yet, once again, Eala demonstrated a level of composure that seemed well beyond her years. She stayed committed to her game plan, absorbed pressure when necessary, and remained mentally steady during critical moments. Rather than allowing frustration to creep into her performance, she continued trusting the patterns that had already brought her success earlier in the tournament. By now, something interesting was beginning to happen. The conversation surrounding Alexandra Eala started changing. Commentators were no longer asking whether she could pull off another upset. Instead, they were asking just how far this remarkable run might continue. Still, an even greater challenge awaited. Alina Svitolina has built her reputation over many seasons as one of the smartest competitors in women's tennis. Her defensive skills, anticipation, and ability to extend rallies force opponents to play one extra shot, and sometimes two or three more than they expected. Against players like Svitolina, impatience becomes your biggest enemy. Many talented hitters have watched winning positions disappear because they rushed points that didn't need to be rushed. Eala approached the challenge differently. She balanced aggression with patience. When opportunities appeared, she attacked decisively. When rallies demanded discipline, she accepted the challenge instead of forcing unnecessary risks. That balance became one of the defining themes of her entire tournament. She wasn't simply hitting the ball harder than everyone else. She was making better decisions. And in professional tennis, those decisions often separate champions from everyone else. With each passing round, another layer of pressure emerged. Media attention increased. Fans around the world began following every result. Filipino supporters flooded social media with messages of encouragement, realizing they were witnessing something that had never happened before in their country's tennis history. For many athletes, that kind of attention can become a distraction. For Eala, it seemed to become fuel. Then came one of the tournament's most anticipated matches. Across the net stood Naomi Osaka, a four-time Grand Slam champion, whose accomplishments speak for themselves. Few active players understand championship tennis better than Osaka, and facing her in the latter stages of a tournament represents one of the toughest assignments on the WTA Tour. The matchup generated enormous excitement. Experience versus momentum. Established champion versus rising star. Global superstar versus one of tennis' fastest rising talents. Yet, when the match unfolded, Alexandra Eala never appeared intimidated by the occasion. She competed point for point, game for game, opportunity after opportunity. Instead of playing cautiously because of Osaka's reputation, she continued trusting the aggressive yet controlled style that carried her through the earlier rounds. By the time she secured another massive victory, disbelief had largely disappeared. Respect had taken its place. Even longtime tennis analysts acknowledged that this was becoming far more than a lucky week. Alexandra Eala was proving she could consistently defeat elite competition. And still, one final obstacle remained. Waiting in the championship match was Jessica Pegula, the tournament's top seed and one of the most consistent performers on the WTA Tour. Pegula's ability to absorb pace, redirect the ball, and remain calm under pressure has made her one of the sport's most reliable competitors for several seasons. If Eala wanted the title, she would have to defeat one more world-class opponent. The final began exactly the way many expected. Pegula's experience quickly became evident, and Eala found herself facing the kind of adversity every young player eventually encounters on a championship stage. Momentum briefly shifted toward the higher seed, forcing Eala to make adjustments rather than panic. And that's where the biggest lesson of the tournament emerged. Champions aren't defined by how they play when everything goes perfectly. They're defined by how they respond when things stop going their way. Alexandra Eala responded with remarkable composure. Instead of rushing points, she trusted her movement. Instead of forcing spectacular winners, she focused on constructing rallies patiently. Instead of allowing one difficult stretch to determine the outcome, she treated every game as a fresh opportunity. Slowly, the momentum began to change. The confidence that had carried her throughout the week returned once again. The rallies became longer. The pressure shifted. And suddenly, it was the experienced favorite searching for answers. Few people noticed one crucial detail during that turnaround. It wasn't just Eala's shot-making that improved. Her belief did too. By the closing stages of the final, she looked like a player who fully expected to become champion. And when the final point arrived, history followed. Alexandra Eala had completed one of the most memorable championship runs of the season, defeating an extraordinary lineup of accomplished opponents and earning the biggest title of her professional career. But lifting the trophy was only one reward. The other reward arrived when the official WTA rankings were updated. A career-high world number 20, a place among the sport's elite, and perhaps most importantly, a signal to every player on tour that Alexandra Eala is no longer simply a promising young talent. She has become someone every opponent must now prepare for. But winning a title is one thing. Proving that this level can become the new standard is an entirely different challenge. And that's where the next chapter of her story becomes even more fascinating. Now comes the question that everyone across the tennis world is asking. Was Alexandra Eala's remarkable week in Washington a once-in-a-lifetime breakthrough, or is it the first chapter of a career that could reach even greater heights? The answer won't come from headlines or social media. It will come from what her performances actually revealed. And when analysts began breaking down her matches, one conclusion kept surfacing. Eala didn't win simply because she was inspired for one tournament. She won because several parts of her game have clearly evolved. The first area that stands out is her maturity during pressure moments. Young players often rely heavily on emotion. When momentum is on their side, they can look unstoppable. But when things begin to unravel, their level sometimes drops just as quickly. Throughout the DC Open, Eala showed something very different. She stayed composed. Whether she was leading or trailing, her body language rarely changed. She continued building points patiently, trusted her decision-making, and avoided chasing spectacular shots simply to create highlight moments. That kind of emotional stability is one of the hardest qualities to develop on a professional tour. It's also one of the biggest reasons elite players remain near the top of the rankings year after year. Another noticeable improvement has been her court intelligence. Modern women's tennis is filled with incredible athletes capable of producing tremendous power from both wings. But power alone doesn't consistently win championships. The players who separate themselves are usually those who understand when to attack, when to defend, and how to force opponents into uncomfortable positions. Throughout Washington, Eala consistently demonstrated that balance. She recognized when to extend rallies instead of rushing them. She changed direction at the right moments. She mixed pace effectively rather than striking every ball at maximum speed. Those decisions may not always appear on highlight reels, but they often determine the outcome of matches against world-class opponents. Then there's her movement. Few statistics fully capture how valuable efficient movement is in tennis. Getting into position just a fraction of a second earlier gives players more options. They can defend more effectively, attack with greater control, or simply recover faster for the next shot. During the tournament, Eala appeared exceptionally comfortable covering the court. Even against opponents known for creating difficult angles, she rarely looked rushed. Instead, she consistently arrived balanced, allowing her to execute shots with confidence rather than desperation. That physical efficiency becomes increasingly important as tournaments progress. Long matches create fatigue. Back-to-back victories test recovery. Championship weeks demand both mental and physical endurance. Washington suggested that Eala is becoming increasingly prepared for those demands. However, perhaps the biggest transformation wasn't technical at all. It was psychological. Confidence in professional sports is difficult to measure, but easy to recognize. Players begin serving more freely. They commit fully to aggressive shots. They trust themselves during the biggest moments instead of hoping their opponent makes mistakes. Throughout the DC Open, Alexandra Eala displayed exactly that kind of confidence. Not arrogance, not recklessness, simply the quiet belief that she belonged on the same court as anyone in the world. That mindset changes everything. Because once an athlete truly believes they can defeat elite competition, future victories become far more realistic. Of course, reaching the top 20 also brings an entirely new set of expectations. Until recently, Alexandra Eala often entered tournaments as the underdog. Opponents carried more pressure. Fans expected the higher-ranked player to win. If Eala lost, many viewed it as part of her development. That dynamic has now changed. As a top 20 player, she will no longer surprise anyone. Every opponent will study her matches. Coaches will analyze her patterns. Players will prepare specific game plans designed to exploit any weaknesses they identify. That's one of the hidden challenges of success. The higher you climb, the more attention your game receives. History offers plenty of examples. Many young stars have enjoyed spectacular breakthrough seasons, only to discover that staying near the top is significantly harder than getting there. Why? Because the rest of the tour adapts. The element of surprise disappears. Every match becomes more physically demanding. Every tournament brings increased expectations from fans, media, and even the players themselves. Managing those expectations will become one of the biggest tests of Alexandra Eala's career. Still, there are encouraging signs. One statistic in particular has attracted widespread attention. According to the information highlighted following the tournament, Eala now shares the season lead in victories over top 10 opponents. Regardless of how that leaderboard evolves as the season continues, the achievement reflects something important. She has repeatedly proven that she can compete with and defeat the very best players in women's tennis. That's not something that happens by accident. Elite victories require complete performances. You must serve well under pressure, return effectively against world-class deliveries, stay mentally composed during momentum swings, and capitalize on the few opportunities elite opponents usually provide. Washington demonstrated that Eala is capable of doing exactly that. But perhaps her greatest impact extends beyond rankings or statistics. Across the Philippines, young tennis players are now witnessing something previous generations never experienced. For decades, aspiring Filipino athletes dreamed of competing on the world's biggest stages. Alexandra Eala has shown that reaching those stages is possible, and more importantly, that winning there is possible too. Representation matters. When young athletes see someone from their own country standing among the world's best, dreams suddenly feel more attainable. That's how sporting legacies begin, not simply through trophies, but by inspiring the next generation to believe they can follow a similar path. The international tennis community has noticed this as well. Commentators are no longer introducing Alexandra Eala as an exciting junior graduate or an emerging prospect. She's increasingly being discussed as a genuine factor in major tournaments, a player capable of changing draws, a competitor that seeded players must take seriously, and someone whose matches are quickly becoming must-watch events. Still, one important reality remains. The WTA Tour is one of the deepest and most competitive environments in professional sports. Every tournament presents new styles, new conditions, new challenges. Success is never guaranteed. Momentum can shift quickly. Injuries, scheduling, confidence, and consistency all influence the trajectory of even the brightest careers. That's why the months ahead may be just as important as Washington itself. Can Alexandra Eala maintain this level? Can she continue collecting valuable ranking points? Can she transform one unforgettable tournament into a sustained run among the world's elite? Those questions will define the next phase of her career. And judging by everything we've witnessed so far, there's every reason to believe the story is far from over, because reaching world number 20 wasn't the finish line. It may have been a moment the rest of the tennis world finally realized that Alexandra Eala's journey is only beginning. As remarkable as Alexandra Eala's breakthrough has been, the next chapter may ultimately define her legacy even more than the one that brought her here. History is filled with athletes who captured the world's attention for a single unforgettable tournament. Some struggled to maintain that level once expectations increased. Others embraced the pressure and transformed one breakthrough into a career filled with championships. Alexandra Eala now stands at that very crossroads. For the first time in her professional career, she won't arrive at tournaments as an overlooked challenger hoping to surprise the favorites. She'll arrive as one of the highest-ranked players in the field. That changes everything. Higher rankings often lead to different draws, greater media attention, larger expectations from fans, and more detailed preparation from opponents. Every player on the WTA Tour will now recognize Eala as someone capable of winning major matches. Coaches will spend more time analyzing her strengths, searching for patterns, and identifying ways to disrupt the rhythm that carried her to success in Washington. That's the price of becoming one of the sport's elite, but it's also a sign of respect. The greatest players don't earn easier matches because they climb the rankings. They earn tougher ones because everyone wants to measure themselves against the best. Fortunately for Eala, her recent performances suggest she has the tools to embrace that challenge. Throughout her championship run, she displayed qualities that extend beyond powerful ground strokes or impressive athleticism. She demonstrated patience when rallies became physical, courage when facing elite opponents, and composure during the biggest moments of the tournament. Those are traits that can't always be taught. They are developed through experience, resilience, and unwavering belief in one's preparation. Another encouraging sign is her willingness to adapt. The modern game evolves constantly. Surfaces change, playing styles evolve, and every opponent presents a unique puzzle. The players who remain near the top of the rankings for years are rarely those with only one style of play. They're the ones who continue learning, adjusting, and improving. If Washington showed anything, it's that Alexandra Eala is becoming that kind of player. She didn't rely on a single strategy throughout the tournament. Against one opponent, she was patient. Against another, she increased the tempo. When defending became necessary, she stayed disciplined. When opportunities appeared, she attacked decisively. That versatility could become one of her greatest assets moving forward. Of course, there will be challenges. The tennis calendar is demanding. Travel across continents, different court surfaces, changing weather conditions, and the physical demands of week-after-week competition can test even the most experienced professionals. Maintaining consistency over an entire season requires not only talent, but also exceptional preparation, recovery, and mental resilience. There will inevitably be difficult weeks. There will be matches that don't go according to plan. There will be opponents who expose areas that still need improvement. That's the reality of professional tennis. What matters most is how a player responds to those moments. If Alexandra Eala approaches future setbacks with the same determination she showed throughout her rise, there's every reason to believe she can continue building on this historic milestone. And then there's the bigger picture. Her success extends far beyond individual rankings. Across the Philippines, young athletes are watching someone who has broken through barriers that once seemed impossible. For years, reaching the upper levels of women's professional tennis felt like a distant dream for Filipino players. Today, that dream has a face, a name, and a story. Alexandra Eala has become proof that world-class success is possible. That kind of impact cannot be measured by ranking points alone. It's measured by inspiration. It's measured by the next generation picking up a tennis racket because they believe they can follow a similar path. It's measured by a nation discovering a new level of confidence in one of the world's most competitive sports. And that's perhaps the most meaningful victory of all. As the season continues, every tournament will present another opportunity to strengthen her position among the world's best. Every match will offer another chance to gain experience against elite competition. Every victory will reinforce the belief that Washington was an exception. It was the beginning of a new era. The tennis world will be watching closely. Fans will be eager to see whether she can carry this momentum into future events. Analysts will continue evaluating how her game develops against different styles and conditions. Opponents will undoubtedly be preparing more carefully than ever before. But one thing is already certain. Alexandra Eala has changed the conversation. She is no longer introduced as a promising prospect waiting for her breakthrough. She is no longer viewed simply as a dangerous underdog capable of producing an occasional upset. She has earned something far more significant: recognition, respect, and a place among the elite competitors in women's tennis. Whether she climbs even higher in the rankings or faces new challenges along the way, her achievement has already secured a special place in tennis history. Becoming one of the world's top 20 players is a milestone that reflects years of discipline, sacrifice, and continuous growth. Now, the next goal begins. Can she break into the top 10? Can she become a consistent contender at the biggest tournaments? Can she continue inspiring millions while building one of the most remarkable careers ever seen in Philippine sports? Only time will provide those answers. But if her recent performances have taught us anything, it's never to underestimate Alexandra Eala. Every time the tennis world has questioned how far she could go, she has answered with another unforgettable performance. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson of this incredible journey. Sometimes, history doesn't announce itself before it happens. Sometimes it quietly steps onto the court, defeats one great opponent after another, lifts a trophy, and suddenly changes the future of an entire sport for an entire nation. Alexandra Eala has already written one historic chapter. Now, the tennis world is waiting to see what she writes next. If you enjoyed this story and want more in-depth coverage of Alexandra Eala, the WTA Tour, and the biggest moments in world tennis, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.